All right, Aaron. I think about 3 weeks ago, StarWars.com had an interview with one Ian McCraig. I think is how you say his name. Who is an artist, a concept artist. He is the one responsible for, like when you hear that Lucas told an artist, draw your worst nightmare for Darth Maul. Like, I want him to be your worst nightmare. Just draw that for me. So this guy, Ian McCraig, drew his worst nightmare, and Lucas looks at it and goes, draw your second worst nightmare. That was
too scary?
That's terrifying. So
Okay.
he's the guy who's responsible for Darth Maul's design and also very responsible for Padme Amidala's design.
Okay. So this is kind of like when, hey, I need to figure out what Star Wars looks like. He gets Ralph McQuarrie to, draw and give me some ideas.
And they had a piece of philosophy while designing stuff for the Phantom Menace that I found really fascinating. And apparently, Lucas was involved in this too, is that they didn't want to take something from just a culture, that you would find on Earth, unless it popped up in multiple cultures.
Okay.
Like Padme's face paint can look like a Japanese geisha. It can also look like a Mongolian bride, and it can also look like the Queen of England. In terms of bringing something that we kind of recognize as cultural to Naboo. And I like the idea that it's not universal until it pops up in multiple cultures, and thus is worthy of not worthy, but thus appropriate to put into Star Wars.
Okay,
that's a really interesting way of going about things. Yeah,
interesting.
But the most surprising thing found in that article is this section that I'm going to read out.
Okay.
All right. He said, for a time, because he obviously there's actually a really, really funny story about George Lucas, because he hired the artist, and then he's also finishing up the script.
Sure.
This story right here is, as George Lucas worked on the first draft of the screenplay, he would visit the artist weekly and share a new installment of the developing saga. This is quote, George would lean back in his chair, close his eyes, and tell us the next part like it was a bedtime story, said McKeag, I think is how you say his name.
He would close his eyes.
Yeah, George would.
Okay.
He'd always stop when we were dying to know what happens next, and he'd get up, laugh, and walk back downstairs, leaving us with this new nugget of the story. I love the idea that he would come in, tell them it's George Lucas telling a story. It's got to be pretty.
Sure.
That's got to be a significant thing to.
And then
you're hearing this story from the first time from the man's lips.
Qui-Gon and Anakin are making their way back to their ship when a
Yeah.
shrouded figure attacks them.
So
all right, guys, that's it for today. We'll see you next time. No, wait, what happens?
Yeah, right. So inevitably, what that means is that you're going to be seeing some first draft stuff that doesn't make into the movie. And this story, I think, took the internet by storm a little bit here, because it says, for a time, that of the two Jedi, the older Jedi was named Obi-Wan, and the younger Jedi was named Qui-Gon. It was very poignant at the end as Obi-Wan dies and Qui-Gon defeats Darth Maul. He stays with his master as he passes away. He not only takes his master's quests, but he literally takes on his name. Qui-Gon becomes Obi-Wan. And that's why when you have Alec Guinness in A New Hope he puts his hood down and says, Obi-Wan, that's not the name I've heard for a long time. Because he's not Obi-Wan, his real name is Qui-Gon. And then right at the end, George changed it.
Just before
they changed it. That's an interesting thing. I'm, for one, glad it didn't happen. One, because I'm biased and I like the way it is.
Well, sure, that's just we have it the way we have it. But what would I have thought if I didn't have that way? And the Obi-Wan that I know initially was Qui-Gon, and he changed his name because of it.
Yeah,
it kind of also in a way goes with Anakin becoming Darth Vader, right? Where you have the same person taking on kind of a new persona. Yeah, that kind of mirrors that a little bit of this is the death of my master, and I will take on his quest, and I'm going to take on his name. Yeah, and, it's interesting.
It is. I think it's interesting.
I wonder what differences we would have had, especially in different expanded canon aspects, like the Kenobi series. What would that have been like if that was the case? Yeah. And how would it have been more confusing if if you had all of it the same? The voice of Obi-Wan was Anakin. Yeah. But that's the Obi-Wan that he knows.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting. I don't know.
It would be funny if like, Obi-Wan, your old master has returned from the dead. Obi-Wan. You said my name. No, other Obi-Wan. Oh, yeah, okay. I get it now. That makes things a little awkward, I guess.
Yeah. So I do wonder, like, what would have happened in the later movies and stuff from there, or what would have happened in other series or anything, I started by evoking what if, and that's a pretty crazy what if. What if they kept that in the script, and what would have changed? How I would have felt about things. I wouldn't have even known it was different because it would have been it. Yeah, that's just what it would have been. Yeah. So, like, looking at it now, it's like, I don't know if I would have liked that, but that's also having it been what it is now. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I would have been like if never mind. I'd be like, you're okay. That's Obi-1, and then you're Obi-2.
Sure, Obi-2 Kenobi,
and Luke could be Obi-3.
It's the same idea of like if in Empire it wouldn't have been a reveal of I am your father. Yeah. It would have been like, no, I killed your father.
Yeah,
like that's just what it would have been.
Sure.
How much has changed from that being his father instead, and
Yeah.
Well, everything Alec Guinness said in the first movie was that Darth Vader killed Anakin Skywalker. That's what it is, right? Like that would have been like, I feel like that. No, that's not what it is. But that's because that's not what it is. Yeah. And I think I wouldn't have liked that. But who knows what the story would have been separate?
Did you ever hear what was said on script instead of "I am your father"?
Obi-Wan killed your father.
Obi-Wan killed your father is what's said on. But then they
no,
yeah, exactly.
Like, man, he really didn't like. He really cared about Obi-Wan.
I mean, I think is also kind of an interesting story. I mean, it's way different than the one we got, but that would be kind of an interesting story.
Yeah, it's one of those like, who do you trust? Yeah. Are the Jedi evil? Are the Jedi not evil? Yeah. Like, it kind of would have dabbled into that a little bit if that was the case. And then, well, why did Obi-Wan kill Anakin Skywalker?
Yeah.
But also, I mean, in a way, that's kind of what happens, right? From a certain point of view. But then Anakin / Darth Vader goes, no, I killed him.
Yeah. You didn't kill Anakin.
I don't know.
He Skywalker
left you for dead on Mustafar, and you were no longer Anakin Skywalker, Like, it's that wiggle room. So, like, I think you could have gone that way a little bit, but that's not how Anakin wants to view it. That's not how Darth Vader wants to view it.
Yeah.
I killed Anakin Skywalker, and I am now Darth Vader.
Yeah. We always talk about how A New Hope has that scene of Obi-Wan answering, hearing the question, answering the question of what happened to his father, Luke's father, because it's such a linchpin of generational Star Wars experience.
Yeah.
It changes each iteration. It's like a different feeling. And now I can think about like, oh man, now I have like the what if stories in there as well. So interesting. But yeah, I read that and I was endlessly like, what? Oh, that's so, like, one, I don't really like it, but I probably only don't like it because it would have changed.
It changes what I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, everything would have been different, I feel like, from there, at least to some extent.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have had a lot of things very similar.
Sure.
The main movies could have been fairly similar.
Yeah.
But because of that being a change, like
I wonder, because I was always into Star Wars, but I got really into Star Wars when the special editions came out. So I never personally had like too much like upset feelings when things were changed in those movies, the original movies, as maybe some older fans. But if like a special edition of the prequels came out and they said, "Oh, we're actually going to do that," I'd be real upset. Like, wait, what?
Sure. I don't think there's been too much done in the special editions of the original that were like maybe that drastic, like where it's very story changing. I think the biggest one's the Han shooting first thing, right?
That's be the biggest one, yeah.
I mean, adding in Jabba the Hutt, I don't think vastly changes a whole lot of the story,
I mean, yeah, they filmed stuff for it, it's fine.
Yeah, like it was part of the plan they were going for, but I'm trying to think of all the changes and stuff because it's been a long time since I've seen the original trilogy.
I feel like is Han and Greedo, and then probably Jedi Rocks.
Yeah, but it doesn't change the story either, though.
I mean, sure, it doesn't. It's just a big change. I mean, you could say the ending, I suppose, the new ending.
The ending having like Hayden instead of Shaw.
Sebastian Shaw,
right?
Yeah, you might be right.
That might be, but also like I get the idea of why, and also like having the prequel and stuff in there. I remember being a kid and being like, I don't know who the hell that is, like you don't see him that much, and here now there he is with hair. He's not all pale. I mean, he's blue, but he doesn't look like the guy I just saw with the mask off, because of all the makeup and what Vader looks like now or what Anakin looks like now. So I remember being like, who's that guy?
Yeah.
There's Obi-Wan, Yoda, and some dude,
Sure.
Like I remember thinking that when I was younger.
I also love the and I'm jealous of being able to watch something as a kid and like fully not understanding like one part of it, but just accepting it. Man, I don't care. I loved everything else.
Sure.
It's hard for me to do that these days. Now I focus on the one thing I don't know.
Yeah.
Or I don't understand.
But no, I like Jedi Rocks. I think was a great change. I love the coming into Mos Eisley, like all those kind of things are really, they're really cool.
Yeah.
The beak on the Sarlacc, like that's a change.
Yeah,
I don't think it changes that much.
The Mos Eisley one definitely, because when you watch the original, you're like, oh my god, Mos Eisley's a gas station.
Yeah, there's not that much, but this like you go into it and you see a lot more and more creatures, and it feels more lived in and bigger. So I like that, but the overall change of the story isn't there. But if they did a prequel special edition, you're like, you know what? His name was Qui-Gon now. We're just flipping that. And I'd be like, what? You can't do that part.
Yeah.
But having Darth Vader go, no, doesn't change as much as I think flipping his whole name to be like, well, actually, you know what? His name was not this ever. Or he went by it in honor of, I guess, But I think also the idea of like I haven't heard that name in a long time makes it more weird that he's going by Old Ben. Like why pick Old Ben then if your name never, like your name was never officially Obi-Wan, it was Qui-Gon. Why aren't you like Old Gon or Old Jin or something like that?
Yeah, sure.
And then it's a little bit more separate. Yeah. I don't know.
No, I get you.
So I'm glad that he swapped it and went back to just that's Qui-Gon, that's Obi-Wan.
Be fun maybe to do like a whole segment that's just like first draft stuff you didn't know about.
Yeah.
Yeah. What and then what, like how does that change the whole story and we do our own what if?
Yeah. I was in the Discord the other day and we were talking about remakes and stuff, and it got in the conversation of just being like, well, remakes and stuff are fine because at least then like you always have the original you can always go to. But I was like, unlike in Star Wars, I hadn't really thought about it for a while, but like talking about like the special editions and stuff, like I'm like, there's nowhere I can really go, I don't think, to get what the original release looked like. It's all just whatever
not official yet.
No, there's no official release for it. There's no DVDs. It's not on, in the extras of Disney Plus or any of that kind of stuff.
Which you figure would be super easy to do.
Yeah, like there's something like I think about that would be really cool to be like, hey kids, you know what you never saw? I want to show you the original. Here's what the Wampa used to look like.
I'm pretty sure. I think this is true. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that written into the agreement of the sale to Disney, he wrote in like you can't show the original.
Yeah, probably. You can't show that. You can't show the holiday special. You can't do any of those. I don't ever want to see those again. Caravan, you can do that thing. Whatever you want. But no, I was just thinking about that the other day.
Or a legend or something, but I feel like I've heard that before.
But and I know like, well, here's where the canon is now. This is what it is, and we've made a few changes, and that's where we're at with it. But some of it makes me wonder if like you said, would we ever get a prequel special edition? Did that release, back in the day, our technology wasn't as good for the original trilogy to maybe capture the full vision he had, whereas in the prequel, it was much closer to what he wanted, you know? Like, would there ever be, like, a special edition for that? And
I get you.
How I think I'd be interested in seeing, like, oh, here's a revamped version of it. It depends on how much it would do and change and stuff, It's
weird, like...
I don't want it to be a lot more CGI, though.
No, I understand.
But what else do you do?
But, like... Is it weird that my standard would be, okay, Lucas did it for the original trilogy. Well, those are his movies. It should only be Lucas that could do it for the prequel trilogy. Those are his movies. So and then if you're going to do it for 7, 8, and 9, you got to go to J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson then.
I get what you mean.
It's like, well, those were their movies.
Sure.
Only they should be able to do that.
Yeah.
Because Lucas does that because he has his adage, like, movies are never finished, they escape.
Sure.
Or, like, I know I've heard before, like, one of the secrets of art is knowing when to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like you can't just go forever. Eventually you have to be like, this is where it's done.
But this was a man who from the beginning said what is on screen is not what was in my head. And I respect that. Like, eventually he's just like, I got $5 million. I'll just do it.
Yeah.
And then he did it for the DVD releases. And then
the Blu-ray.
And then that was sold. Well, yeah, it was the Blu-ray. And then it was sold to Disney. And then when they put it on Disney Plus, there were new versions, like McClunky, and then people were like, McClunky, where's that come from? Who added this? Lucas isn't in charge anymore. And they were like, he made the change before he left.
It's what's in our contract, and we had to add McClunky.
Yeah.
Which that one I never understood. I don't get what that was really like. I didn't think I was like, oh, now I get it.
I know, but I'll never forget it.
I guess, yeah. But no, sequel trilogy. I've often thought of like, what if Disney did a special edition? I know a lot of people didn't like the sequel trilogy. Like there was a lot of people that talked like just like I don't want it, and then there was like a whole thing about like they're gonna remake a new one. They're gonna discredit all that and just make a new sequel trilogy. I was like, well, you could just special edition it. Yeah. Make some changes to make it maybe flow together a little better or something or whatever it is. And there's a few things in my head I'm like, I would do this, this, and this, you know? But I don't know if they'll ever do it. But because George did it with the original trilogy, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to do it to the sequel trilogy either, you know?
Think, I mean, well, I would also want to give it a little bit of time for the sequel trilogy. The prequel trilogy, I think at the very least, being able to figure some way to upscale the resolution of the video effects, because especially 2 and 3 were shot on digital, so they're only ever going to be really 1080p files. You know, you can like AI upscale stuff, but the better you can make that look good, I mean, the better those movies are going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just saw people talking not too long ago on somewhere. They were like, man, this render of the Galaxy Opera House in Episode 3, like outside, is so amazing. This was in 2005. And like, yes, complete CG look, you know. It used models and stuff as well, but it was gorgeous. Then the next shot is Anakin, you know, just walking in a hallway, and it's not very well rendered, you know. It just doesn't look great because you're immediately putting a person in it, and now you have real life compared to this, you know, the CG. The further we get away from that, the more that will become more apparent. You know, at least for me. You know, it was still magic when I was a kid, but you see it every once in a while. Oh yeah, that's what I would want, I guess. In a
same thing happens going back watching old movies in general, where like of the time, this looked, this was the best. This was peak. Me playing Wave Race 64 on my N64 back in the 90s. Was like, this is the best the video games are ever gonna be, you know. And you go back now, and you're like, that doesn't look as good as it used to. But you've seen so much other stuff and what it can be now, you know. So I don't know. I'll be curious to know what the 80s into when did special editions come out for the original trilogy? 90, it must have been in the 90s, right?
Like so 96, 97.
About 20. It was between 10 to 20 years, I guess, right before he started releasing a special edition of stuff. So, I don't know. We're at that point for prequel stuff. Yeah. But like you said, that was George, and I think he's done. Yeah. So, maybe you give 10, 20 years on the sequel trilogy, and maybe people are like, you know what, let's add a couple things that we didn't think about before or something. Yeah. But I don't know. I guess it depends on, like, is what we have what their vision was, or did something escape and you could do it differently? Because I feel like that's what George's was. Yeah. I can't actually do this stuff with what I can do in the 70s and 80s.
I get what you mean. Like, we are in the era where, like, if you can imagine it,
you can do quite a bit.
Some amazing artists have worked very hard to get us to that point.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, even in the prequels, Lucas is like, we don't have these computers can't look great.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make them look great, and now they all look great.
Yeah, you can imagine quite a bit.
Yeah. Which I imagine is his biggest critique of those movies is that you're able to pull off everything you tried.
Yeah.
Try to do something you couldn't do. Yeah. You know, that's what film was for him. So that's why I'll always love him as a filmmaker.
Chat looks like it says 97 is when the special editions came out, which I remember getting like the case, all 3 VHSs, and like that's what I watched when I went to bed. Oh, I know because I have posters on the wall. But no, that's an interesting tidbit for some of the. I wonder if there's more things like that come out, because it'd be cool to know like what was some of the original ideas. It's always neat to hear like some of those. And
I love that, you know, this article came out 3 weeks ago for us, but it's something I just didn't know about the movie for 20 some years.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.